absolute privilege to have with us one of India's most eminent stars, Manisha Koirala, a winner of a number of Filmfare Awards, number of films, but more importantly, in April this year, 5 years after her treatment, she went off to the Everest base camp and was able to have a very successful climb there. So a big hand for her incredible, indomitable energy, Manisha. Nasreen Munni Kabir, many of you would be familiar with. Nasreen has been the curator of the Channel 4 series on Indian films for the last 35 years. She's also written some seminal books, everything from M.F. Hussain, including her more... M.F. also Hussain Sahib, didn't you do Hussain Sahib? Okay, Zakir Hussain. And more recently, the one on Gulzar, which we were very delighted to do in Jaipur earlier this year. And of course, she's done this brilliant documentary series on Shah Rukh Khan, which happened, I think, 18 or 17 years ago. 2004. So welcome to both of you. It's absolutely spectacular to have you both here for our closing session. Before I start, a big thank you to Jessica and all our volunteers here at JLF at British Library. A big hand to them because truly they have been magnificent. To our colleagues and friends at the British Library and all our technical crew out there in the technical booth, thank you guys for being so wonderful and making this so smooth. And as somebody said to me, I was doing an interview and they said, so what's the fifth pillar of what makes Jaipur so successful? And I said, it's the incredible energy that the audience brings to every session. They're so engaged, they're so incredible, and really it's to each of you. So a big hand to all of you, and thank you all for being here. Manisha, this is always my fan moment. We do this conversation in many different cities, and I'm always amazed at how much she's been able to achieve. This particular book, and I hope you all will pick it up, it's important not just because it's about her life, but it's because of her fight and struggle against the struggle against cancer. And what comes through really at the end is how much of energy she put in fighting this particular disease. Manisha, welcome. Welcome to London and welcome to JLF. And look forward to... You were with us in January this year. And
yes.
Tell us everything that you've done from January till now, all the films that you've been shooting.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Sanjoy, for making me part of this fantastic platform. Thank you for inviting me to Jaipur. Well, I've been actually... since the last time I met you, I went to the base camp and I finished an American film, and now I'm in between another film, left the set and came here for this. Yeah, it's been...
And that's a Bollywood film, or is that a...
like an indie film. It's called Maska. So, yeah, doing some interesting project.
Munni, one of the most interesting things about Manisha's sort of life story in Indian cinema is really the trajectory of women and, and the roles that she's played as a woman. Will you give us a sense of perhaps Bollywood before and Bollywood during? Because it's really, Bollywood has changed, or Indian cinema in many ways has changed. Tell us a little bit about, and of course, Manisha.
The thing is, I'm sure a lot of people here know about the history of the films and have seen lots of films. Obviously, we could see a line between the 50s where there were definitely more stronger women roles. But then by the 60s, it became much more emphasis on romance. And romance meant the guy was always the key person. And then in the 70s, you have Mr. Bachchan. And Mr. Bachchan meant there was very little scope for women in his films. And that meant that had a knock-on effect for a long time. It wasn't just the 70s, it became into the 80s. And even when Manisha came into the films, I would say that strong women roles, that she would carry the film entirely alone to the box office, was not available to her. What you noticed about her from the very start and is that she brought a lot of dignity to her roles. It feels odd to be talking about you when you're sitting next to me, but please forgive me. She brought a lot of dignity. I loved her dialogue delivery. For someone who maybe Hindi wasn't her mother tongue, it was soft and a gentle and perfectly enunciated dialogue. And also she was closer in a way. I would have imagined her to be much more involved with independent cinema, meaning more thoughtful films. What you can see in her work from the very start is that she, ultimately, you're as good as you get cast. Your casting is the question. So she attracted the attention of the best directors of that era.
So we'll come back to the best directors and all the people she acted with. Manisha, what Munni said, great grace and so wonderful. Your background, you came from Nepal's most eminent political dynasty. What was it like when you first decided that I'm going to go off to Bombay and throw all of this legacy to the wind and sort of act in films? What was the reaction?
Yeah, actually, the reaction wasn't very positive, and and it was like a kind of a shock for my parents, and they were not really keen. It was only my grandmother who supported me, who said that you got to do what you feel like doing, and you just make sure that you do your best in that. So with her support, she was the head of the family, so nobody could say no. And I kind of emotional blackmailed my mom to bring me to Mumbai, and we had a great support from a film journalist called Meena Iyer, who took me around meeting the key people over there and that time, and got a good positive response and never looked back.
One of the things you talk about in the book is actually a reconciliation that you had with your mother,
Yeah.
because very early on in their struggles, you felt that she had abandoned you.
Yeah. It because of a political turmoil in Nepal, and my grandfather was struggling to get democracy in Nepal that time. We all were in Banaras, and he was actually for a short time, for a period, he was politically exiled, and so the family was rooted in Banaras. And when my grandfather went back to Nepal, he kind of wanted my father to go back, and he wanted my mom to be there for my dad and me to grow up with my grandmom. And those days in our family, if the head of the family wanted something, my mother had to follow through that. And for me, as a child, I think I was 7 or 8 year old, I couldn't understand and I couldn't fathom, but it was huge, painful experience for me to see my mother leave me at a strange place. And though she left me with my grandmother and the rest of the family, but for a child that age, it didn't make sense. And for a long period of time in my adulthood, I had to deal with this sense of being abandoned. And so I wrote that in the book because when I got diagnosed with cancer, it felt as if life was abandoning me. And
There's a moment in your book that you describe when your mother's walking away and you're crying at the porch of your home.
yeah, I remember that very, very clearly. When she left me, I kept on standing there at the door and hoping she would turn back and grab me and hug me. But she kept on walking and she didn't look at me even once. And I stood there staring and crying. And years later, when I was asking my mom, Mom, why didn't you turn back? How could you just leave me and go? So she said, Beta, because I didn't want you to see my tears. I had to leave you at Dadi's place because that was the, what was expected.
So there you are now in Bombay, and unlike much of the legendary stories of many actors who had to have a struggle period, as they say, your launch into the Bombay or the Bollywood film industry was fairly easy. Tell us about being cast in the first film and going to see some of the directors and what happened.
Yeah, it was actually fairly easy because for whatever, I think for the longest period, I felt I was meant to be doing this. That's why it was so easy. But Meenadi, mom, and me went to Mumbai. My first meeting was with Shekhar Kapoor, and Shekhar signed me within minutes of meeting. That project never happened. In the process, we met Bonnie Kapoor, and that time Prem, which eventually Tabu did the movie. And something had happened and Tabu had walked out, and so they were considering taking somebody else, and they had taken me on. But Boniji was very clear that if Tabu comes back to the project, our commitment is with her. And so that, and then I met Chintu ji, Rishi Kapoor ji, who was making Henna that time. And he also wanted me in the project, but as a second lead, because they had already signed Zeba Akhtiar ji. So I guess everybody that I met gave me a very positive response. And so I just felt as if I belonged already. And then eventually it was Subhashji's project. He was looking for a newcomer. And then me and Vivek Mushran, we kind of did a screen test and we got okayed. And yeah. That's the story.
Munni, you're my eternal source of Bollywood gossip, and every time, because apart from everything, Munni also subtitles or does the subtitling for many of the films that come on, many of the big films. And, when her first film came out, what was your sense? Because you have such this thing about who's going to succeed or not going to succeed. What was your sense of her first work?
I think, to be very honest, I didn't see Saudagar immediately. It was later. But I think the film that I saw was a love story.
Okay.
And the minute you saw that and you saw Manisha on the screen, you see that she had this kind of sparkle which is required of stars, and yet she was a character that you kind of identified with. And I have to come back to the idea of being cast. Now, the question is, all of us as audiences, we might like stars, but ultimately it is the director who has to see talent. It is he or she who spots the potential of the person. And you can see in the period that she was starting and working through the 90s, they were the best directors who cast her. I know, Manisha Maniratnam personally, and he's somebody who does not suffer fools, for one, and secondly, is very particular about who he casts. He had and continues to have the pick of the crop. He can pick up the phone to any actress and actor, and because Manisha has that kind of reputation, they immediately pay attention to it. And he unusually cast her in 2 films, Bombay and also Dil Se, of course. So you basically see that here it's not up to me or anybody else, even the audience. It is the director whose eye catches the talent.
Munni, 1942 love story, Dil Se, Bombay, all of these, one of the things that really brought her to the fore were the wonderful music scores to which she performed. And how much does that make in a film in Bollywood?
I would say that if your songs are not popular, then no matter how brilliant an actor you are, you won't be popular.
That's
Is
so
that
true. Very, very, very true.
Because it is the emotional content that actually connects. If you sing, like for example, Ek Ladki Ko Dekha, the minute you say that, your face comes in their mind, so that the song evokes the actor. And if we go back in time, if you see this Devanand songs, everybody loved Devanand because of his songs. And for Manisha, she had the most the best songs in the 90s.
And the most beautiful outfits. I mean, Bombay, for those of you who've seen it, absolutely stunning sequence, as of course was Jia Jale. Manisha, there you were now, you know, in your first 2 or 3 films, you had become pretty much the superstar of Bombay. Did it change your life?
I guess it must have, but I was too busy in my work to even notice it or to fathom the changes or to understand. It's now that when I look back it must have. It does take a toll on your brain because you're too young, you're too popular, you're earning a lot, and you're very naive when you're young. So I guess it does affect.
Grandmom wasn't there to sort of, not a girl?
You know, the thing is, these things happens. It doesn't happen overnight. It slowly seeps into your personality and your being and your thought processes and your character. So I'm sure it must have seeped into mine.
When did you feel that you had sort of changed? I mean, you refer to it in the book, but when did you actually start sensing there was a change?
Honestly, I didn't realize it till I had to sit back and look back at my life. And when death was staring at me, that's the time I started reflecting and I started checking on myself. And I was thinking where and how and what were the things? Because can I change the thing about cancer? So one of the most shocking and most profound experience for me has been cancer diagnosis. And what it really compelled me to do was to reflect, was really to be authentic, and to know you can't sugarcoat things, you can't lie to yourself, you really have to be honest and face it. And during that time, when I started reflecting, things started becoming clear to me, and I realized how marvelous, how gifted my life was, how, life just, I got such beautiful career break, beautiful, wonderful directors and great co-actors and such marvelous chances I had in my life. And how slowly I had started taking it for granted. And when I was facing death, that's the time I kind of said, okay, if I got a second chance to life, what different would I do? How different would I live? And that's when, I started saying, oh no, I need to be more grateful. I need to be more mindful. I need to be more appreciative. And I need to work harder. And if people have loved my work, I need to really support that and surprise them with more, better work and things like that.
She's been a very bad puppy, just for the record. She's been very sweet right now. There was a time I love telling the story. She hates it. We were in Cannes, and I get this call saying, Manisha's there, can you get her to walk the red carpet? So, of course, when you have long hair, you can pick up the phone and speak to people. So I did, and they said, yes, absolutely, bring her down the red carpet. So I called back and I said, and when I called her, because it was closing, I was there waiting to walk her down, and she was on this boat partying with HS and Surina. I'm like, what are you doing there? I was like livid. Munni, Manisha, she's worked with every Khan. She was at that time when the Khans were young. They still think, of course, they're young. They forget that we are all the same age right now, but she worked with every Khan. And was there a difference in each of the films that she did with them?
Again, it's a combination of the director and then the actor. So obviously, again, when we look at Mani Ratnam and Mansoor, who's also very difficult, and Mansoor Khan, I'm sure you all know. He's cranky and he's got very particular ideas. And then you've also got Sanjay Leela Bhansali. Now, these are all very difficult directors. Not difficult because they are full of ego. It's because they have talent and they want to make the best possible film. And so to please them, I think you please them before you have that interaction with your star. Obviously, the 90s was the big Khan era. From 89, when Amil did Qayamat Tak, No, actually, it was Salman's first, was 88, Maine Pyar Kiya, then 89, Amir comes along, and by 93, 94, Shah Rukh had made his presence felt. And throughout the 90s, you have the Khans really actually ruling the roost, we could say. But they were also, if you take a film like Bombay, now Arvind Swamy was equally important in Tamil cinema. So you have a situation where Manisha can very easily and comfortably act against these kind of huge figures, because not so huge in terms of the set, they were not full of ego on the set, but they were in the real world, they had a whole reputation to deal with. And so she was able to keep her own. Now, if you see Bombay again, or you see Dil Se again, and you see 1942 again, you will see that actually Manisha has a very interesting quality, which is not often seen, is that she can be a very mysterious character. You see her and you think you know her, but you don't. And that's something that Mani Ratnam picked up on for Dil Se. And to some extent, even Bombay.
And even in Bombay.
Even Bombay, you will find that Arvind Swamy gets fascinated by this image of this person, and then only slowly does he actually understand her. And Ek Ladki Ko Dekha is, they haven't actually met. He has just seen
It's an imagination.
her. It's the imagination. But it is also, you know, I do believe that when I hear Manisha talk today, if you don't have depth of character, I don't think you can be mysterious. And I think that's what came through in those roles. She looked like someone who you can't really second guess what she's thinking. And usually now when I hear her speak, I can see that she was thinking very deep thoughts. Of course, in Bombay cinema, you don't always think deep thoughts, but the fact of the matter is there is a possibility.
But Manisha, I must say, most of the films that you've done have had integrity, and that's the reason they have had a life beyond. Some of these films, disappear and sink, and actresses tend to, because of the insecure nature of the industry, you pick up any film that you're being offered. What was your process in choosing, say, the Dil Se's or the Bombays or 1942? I mean, 1942, of course, one knows, but even the later films that you did.
I have to say that some guiding force was helping me, because and of course the fact that great directors chose me was a blessing for me. And Mani sir, Mansoor sir, Sanjay Bansali. I remember Bansali's script. I had read the script because he used to assist Vinod during 1942, A Love Story.
Occasionally they do have scripts in Bollywood, or they used to. It wasn't that there was never a script.
Very true. Very, very true. We used to be narrated this story, not really. So I had read the script and I had loved it. And I got an opportunity to work with some of the best directors in my time. And Amir Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, and Salman Khan happened to be in those. But the fact that good directors chose was, something I feel I didn't do anything. I think they wanted me, and I was actually so naive. I almost said no to Manisha. And because my surroundings were that they were thinking that if I do a mother's role, I'll get typecasted. So there were a few people who were advising me not to do. And there was somebody called Ashok Mehta, who was the DOP. And he really guided me through the process. He explained to me, and I ended up doing some good projects. Yeah.
Manisha, there you were, arrived, the world was at your feet, you were celebrated pretty much across, and then you fell ill.
Yeah.
And before you fell ill, before you actually realized that you were sick, there was an incident where there were the two Tibetan healers, or no, New Zealand healers, or from Africa.
Yeah, Aboriginal
healers
from New Zealand,
who had come and they were scanning you and your mother, and
yeah, I had some really interesting experiences during that time in 2012.
This was about a year before the diagnosis?
6 months, 7 months before the diagnosis. I used to fall sick quite often, and so a friend of mine had suggested, there is Aboriginal healers from New Zealand have come. Would you like to go? I said, yeah. So mom and me went, and what they do is they put the patient or the person on the bed and they scan through the body and they don't even touch you. So they were actually scanning through me, and the lady kept on stopping over my ovaries and.
This was the daughter. The mother was scanning
Yeah,
your mother.
my mom, and the younger one was scanning me, and she said, stopped over my ovaries, and she called the elderly lady, and she also checked, and again stopped over my ovaries, and she said, "You're very angry with your ovaries. Your ovaries are red hot." And I said, I mean, this was something I really couldn't understand, couldn't comprehend. And so she said basically to send loving energy to the ovaries. And on the way back, my mom was fine, absolutely fine, And on the way back, I was like, oh, God knows what they're talking about and how. And 6-7 months down the line, I had ovarian cancer. So.
You write so evocatively about the time when you're back in Kathmandu, and your brother's with you, and you've gone back home, and the first test result has come, and what happened?
Well, it's basically it's something. I have lost words for it, but when one gets diagnosed with cancer, it's something very strange, something very new, something beyond. That whole day was probably the longest day of my life, because since morning I had done CT scan, my biopsy results, and blah, 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 and so many scans and all that. And I was waiting for the doctor to come and tell me what was wrong with me. And I was very eager and I wanted to know, but it around evening, 5-6 o'clock, everybody came, and I started noticing it was not only my parents and my brother, but it was my uncle and aunt and few other family members. They all came to the room, and I was thinking, why are they here? And the doctor who diagnosed, Dr. Madhu Ghimire, he's a family doctor and who's known me since I was born, probably. He's checked my grandfathers, my granduncles, he knows the family very well. He had tears in his eyes, and he said, Manisha, there are treatment for this nowadays. And I was again saying, treatment? What is he talking about? What do I have, doctor? And then he finally said, it seems you have cancer. And I really did not know how to respond or react or what to think or feel. I was stunned. And then I said, okay. And I had seen in some weird movie somewhere that you can cut it off and you're fine. So I said, why can't you just cut it off and throw it away? And my aunt, who's a gynecologist, she said, what all to cut and throw, Manisha? It spread. And then it kind of hit me that finally that probably okay. And that also actually it took me a long time. After the diagnosis, we came to Mumbai, we got a second opinion. Through the second opinion, we kept on hoping, mom and me were together, and we kept on hoping that maybe it's a wrong diagnosis, maybe there was some mistake in Kathmandu, and now the doctor will tell me that it was all wrong and, I'm fine. But there again, I could tell by Dr. Advani, who was my oncologist, not oncologist, but somebody who... Consultant. And I could see in his eyes that it was a bad news. And there were a couple of other doctors. I was actually reading their faces and expressions and thinking, are they being too kind? Is it really serious? What's going on? Trying to understand the situation. And eventually it hit me that I had late-stage ovarian cancer. And it's then I took a call, my family and my friends, my mom's friends, to take me to New York
And yet in all of this, and through your treatment, there was that sense of hope that somehow this will turn. How does hope play out in your story?
Huh. There were times there were no hope as well. And there were times it was filled with fear and pain. And my doctors in New York felt you can do it. My nurses constantly kept on telling me it's tough, but it's doable. It's tough, but you can do it. And I used to, after my surgery, when I first met my surgeon,
In New York.
in New York, and I asked him about possibility of me surviving this, and he said, "Yeah, oh yeah, I have a patient who survived, and he's like 25 years cancer free, and he's fine." And then after the surgery, when the surgery was so the surgery was actually 11 hours, and but it was successful. So when I met him after the surgery, when I gained consciousness, and I told him, "Doc, will I live for 25 years?" So he actually said, "Look, I can't tell you. I didn't realize your cancer had spread out so much. So until and unless I see how you respond to the treatment, I really can't tell you." So again, there was a pause. I was hopeful, but then again, there was no hope. And I had to wait for a couple of treatments of chemo so basically, every time there was hope, my doctor would, like, after my cancer marker falling down, he said, "Okay, fine, you're cancer free now, but you have to wait for 3 years, because normally this type of cancer can reoccur within 3 years, and it's 90% chances that it'll reoccur." So for 3 years again, after being cancer free, I was on my toes. So it was a continuous. So after 3 years, after 3 years of being cancer free, I went to my doctor again. I said, "Doc, can I live now? Do you think I will live now?" He said, "Manisha, it has to be 10 years." And that's when I decided. I said, "How long will I live with fear? I'm going to take life by this thing horn, and I'm going to live it. If I have to go, I'll make peace with my death. I will make peace, and I will go. But I'm not willing to live with fear." And as many years as I have, the 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 10, 25, I don't know, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to put my best foot forward, and I'm going to live a good life. I don't care how long or how many years I get to live.
There's a lovely, yes, a big. There's a lovely incident in the book that she writes about when you go running and you've got your hoodie on and a guy stops you.
Yeah, I was very conscious, very, very, very conscious of seeing pity in people's eyes. So I didn't want to. It's very difficult. Give me a moment. Thank you.
This is a dramatic pause.
There was a moment in my, there was a time when I really was bald, and my eyelashes were gone, my eyebrows were gone, there was not a single hair in my body. And I used to look like an alien. And so I was very scared of looking into people's eyes and seeing pity in their eyes. So I would normally put a hoodie on, I would just look down and hope that nobody recognized me. So, I started seeing a different aspect of humanity, because people were not pitiful. They were actually encouraging me. They were actually, one day I was going for a walk in the morning, and my hoodie on and looking down, and somebody said, "Hey, Manisha, Koirala." I looked back and said, "Keep it up, you're doing good." And slowly I started noticing, and I started having courage to look people in the eye, and I started noticing that people were actually very compassionate and very helpful. And unlike what I was imagining, that there'll be pity, there'll be mockery, there'll be some kind of a condescending attitude towards me, but nothing, none of them. It was very encouraging, it was very warm, and I slowly started opening up, and so I realized the world is not really a bad place.
Munni, Manisha's story is like a Hindi film in many ways, isn't it? Tragedy queen and all of that. But tell us what differentiates sort of pity and empathy, and what actually works in a film in terms of formula?
I think when Manisha is talking about something so real as cancer and the treatment and facing it and the need for hope, the Indian cinema, particularly Hindi film, has been absolutely terrible about showing someone who is not well. I remember always Javed Sahab used to...
Why Kal Ho Na Ho? I'm
Yes.
dying for about 3 hours in the film.
Yes, all of it is terribly fake. And either it's completely not based in any medical research or anything of the sort. And I always think of a lovely line that Javed Saab always uses. He says the Hindi film doctors are very, very clever. I said, why? He said they just read the pulse and say, ye maa banne wali hai. So really, she's going to be, she's pregnant. So basically, they have no idea. And if you see a film like Anand, my God, I didn't know that is some alien disorder he had. It was nothing to do with cancer, and all these recordings he left behind, we didn't know what was going on, I was very confused about it. So that actually Hindi cinema, the films themselves, don't treat any kind of life-threatening disorder, disease, at all well, at all competently. And I think people generally in the film industry are very fearful even to discuss something real. They're very fearful. They think, should they say it? Shouldn't they say it? Should they show empathy? Should they not? And the curiosity. Sometimes I find that the kind of questions they ask are a little distasteful. They're not very thought through questions, and that's the problem. So if you see films and you see how someone who is not well is treated, you definitely don't take it seriously.
Manisha, Munni said brave, and nobody wants to talk about it, and yet you decided to write this absolutely important and incredibly beautifully written book. Tell us how you came to write the book.
I waited for a while, Sanjoy, because I wanted to tell a story which will give hope and courage to people and not the otherwise. So I waited till I was hopeful and I felt confident that, okay, I am on good grounds and I'm healthy and I'm fine. So it took me 6 years. I had kept lots of notes. Actually, there was a Tibetan teacher who had told me to keep the notes, and he said, Manisha, what you're going through right now is really precious. You will forget it once you're well, so please keep notes. And I used to write and I used to keep notes. But I waited till I gained confidence that I'm fine. And I wrote this book purely with hope that when there's not enough positive information out there, I want this book to do the needful. And it was so important for people who've gone through this and come out as a winner to give hope. And at a time like that, for me to hear about Yuvraj Singh, to hear about Lisa Ray, was huge support, emotionally, mentally. And so I guess with that hope, I've written this book. And to say that you can come out of disease like this, and that you can lead a better life than before. And that's why I've come out with this book.
Will you play the lead actress in the movie on the book?
No, not really. I don't know if there's going to be a movie on it. But, I think, Sanjoy, I have to say this. Today's times are different. People are coming out and sharing their story of struggle. They're no longer being scared of being judged wrongly. Because also, I think there's people who are educated, people who support each other. And whether it's Sonali Bendre or Irfan, and everybody actually, but otherwise, there used to be fear that will we get work or not, if there is a taboo. not only work-wise, of course, but also in a society, because I used to meet a lot of cancer patients and their mothers and the families. And it's like, if you get cancer, it's like a curse, or it's as if you've done some bad karma in your previous life, so you're facing this in this life. Oh, some kind of taboo in the society to be accepted. So, but I think we need to change the narrative. We really need to educate the filmmakers or the people and to encourage people to come and share their stories. And I got encouraged when there was somebody when I was my hoodies down and walking and nervous. I got encouraged by somebody passing by and say, "Hey, Manisha, you're doing a great job." I realized that world has kinder people, better people. Likewise, I don't think we need to be scared of sharing our stories.
Munni, has the narrative in Indian cinema and Bollywood changed?
You mean in terms of...
The way scripts are today
I think-
defined, judgmental.
I think definitely.
It has to change. I think the people will reject it now if we
Absolutely.
don't change the narrative.
Absolutely, and I think women are definitely having a much better roles,
Yeah.
much better roles. And generally, there is still a division. There's also Salman Khan, who manages to have his crowd, which is no harm. There's no harm. He entertains, but there is a lot of people who are independent filmmakers and even commercial filmmakers who are much more thoughtful about the stories. What's happened really is that I think the only big, slightly, I would go back to it, which is a bit of a shame, they have equated realism with realistic screenplays and acting and so on and so forth. But somehow there's a resistance to accepting the song within the realism. And therefore, the music which used to tie the audience to the films, that is fading a bit. So there's a double emphasis of the connection between star and film. And before it was star, music and film. Now, if you think about when we talked about Ek Ladki Ko Dekha, or you think about Kya Kehna from Bombay, the minute you had that, you were drawn to the film and you were drawn to the characters. So the change is the loss of song, I think, greatly, but the gain is a lot more realism. And they have to talk to young people. And young people, as Manisha just described, they are very clued in. They actually are watching Netflix and Amazon all day long or whatever, and want to see Indian cinema also go that way. The biggest thing I think will change is the duration of the films, the realism of the writing. The dialogues have to be more everyday, not so much melodrama. Melodrama is gone. Romantic films don't appeal as much as they used to. You have to have some other story going on. Just romance, no.
Yeah, very interesting. When she said melodrama has to go, there's a story I need to share. When I'm doing these movies now, I actually tell my director, listen, I'm from the era of melodrama. So you need to control me. You need to tell me, okay, Manisha, you're going over the top. So I actually tell all my directors now. So yeah.
But this inner experience, I'm going to open it up in a second, but this inner experience, Manisha, or this incredible journey that you've gone through, it's obviously changed you completely and it's given you a completely different perspective. Do you lean on it when you go to your role? Has it changed the way you act?
I think it must have. Something as drastic as this has to shake shake me up. And I got a comment from Vinod, who's the producer of Sanjoy. And though I have a teeny weeny role in that, but he saw the rushes and he called me and he said, Manisha, there's something in you which wasn't there earlier. And I said, what is
Tehrav.
it? Mujhe
Tehrav means
Stillness.
depth, anchoring.
Yeah. So I guess it must have changed me. But I did notice. Yeah.
To the audience. I'll take questions in little clusters. So we'll take these two and then we'll come back to this side.
Hello, Manisha. First of all, let me congratulate you on a great second innings in Bollywood with, Dear Maya, Sanjoy, and Lust Stories. And now I'd come to my question. I remember you once produced a film in 2004, Paisa Vasool. And that was quite, that was a step which was very much ahead of its time, both off-screen as well as on-screen, because on-screen we had two female protagonists who were doing comedy, which was a rarity at that time. Now that, there are so many platforms available rather than just the box office obsessed cinema culture, we've got Netflix and Amazon, as was just said. Would you feel yourself tempted to, turn towards filmmaking, the art and craft of filmmaking, either as a producer, director, or even a screenwriter, because your book suggests that you do indeed have a flair for writing? Thank you.
So just hold that question. We'll take one more and come back to you.
Hi.
Will you look at being producer, director, scriptwriter?
When you first came to Bollywood and you literally walked in and you immediately got success, my question to you is, when you faced the camera after the screen test, what was it that made you realize that you're an actor? Or were you doing this before when you were young? What was it that made you switch on and switch off the moment the camera said action?
Okay, to answer your question, making Paisa Vasool was great fun. Shushmita and me and my friend directed this, Srinivas, and he was Mani Ratnam's assistant, and so it was great fun. And I know it was far ahead of its time, and I definitely would love to dabble with that. Love to be creative and be behind the camera and be part of cinema and filmmaking. But at present, I'm involved in acting full on. So maybe my next step next year would be that. Let's see. To answer your question, sir, actually I realized that I loved being in front of camera when I was doing a Nepali film. I did a Nepali film called Pheri Bhetaula, and during that time, I did that because initially I'd done an ad film in Nepal, which became very popular. Then they were offering me Nepali cinema, and I thought, this is okay, it's 1 month, it's pocket money is good. And so carelessly I did that. But after that, I really wanted to go to Bombay, Mumbai, and take it up seriously. During that Nepali cinema, I realized that I liked being in front of camera. I liked acting. I used to do theater, but somehow I just knew that this was for me. And I had to try in Bombay. That's it. I think Subhaji, after that, training under Mr. Ghai was also a great platform. Both Vivek and me, we had Dilip ji, we had Rajkumar ji, we had Deepti Nawal, Jackie Shroff. We had so many people, and Ashok Mehta, and so many people there. It was a great platform, learning platform for us. And watching them perform, watching them being switch on and switch off, how they were doing it. In fact, I remember Dilip Saab called my mom and said, is bachchi ka nazar utar lo. Ye, she's something, which was a great blessing. I mean, I just kept on getting unknowingly encouraged, and I guess I was observant also what was going on. So that was a good thing, yeah.
I'll come back to you in a second.
Manisha, how are we progressing with cancer treatment in India? Is it that there is more cancer in India, or is there better diagnosis? And is it an opportunity for people who are diagnosed with cancer to reassess their lives as you've done?
What was the first question? I mean, see, I think
the treatment in India?
My treatment was actually in New York, at the Sloan Catering, and it was 4 months. Initially, it was meant to be 6 months, but in 4 months, my treatment got over, and I was fine, and I went back to Mumbai. I think cancer is rising in developing countries because of various things. But also now slowly people are talking about and a lot of awareness is coming about. And also the better treatment facilities are available now in India. I know this now because right now my uncle is actually getting treated in Tata. And they're the best doctors. And it's government-run hospital, but we do have very good doctors and good treatment. I was also consulting for a second opinion in New York, and I was told in New York that it's the same treatment available back home in Mumbai as well. So even though the cancer it seems to be increasing, but also a lot of awareness and progress and treatment facilities are also increasing.
Is it a chance to reassess one's life?
Absolutely. I think it's a, for me, I took it as a positive thing. And I really needed to really reevaluate my life and start looking life differently. And there is hope, and I feel there is a power in our will much more than we really realize that. The strong willpower, and I guess, yeah.
You have to read the book to actually see how it changed her life. And what the book really is one part of it is about the medical treatment, but what it actually is about the fact that she used every iota of her strength and every cell and every mind and every part of her being to fight the disease in the way that it needs to be fought. And therefore, the treatment was successful. So really, kudos to her incredible strength.
Hi, Manisha. Really glad to meet you. It's still feels like, surreal. You're like a beautiful dream come true. So my question to you is obviously I've grown up watching a lot of Bollywood, and we listen, Bollywood has helped millions of us to heal from broken hearts, from a broken back, or an injury. So my question to you is, if at all Bollywood has played a part in your spiritual healing and, your emotional healing.
Bollywood has played a part in my healing. Basically, yeah, I mean, that's interesting question. It made me think. Well, I think the moment I decide to heal, I started looking, when I had this disease, I was really focused about healing. And I started looking into various books and various methods, emotional healing, psychological, mental, physical. Of course, my doctors were there, and I was eating right. But I realized the value of holistic healing. And that time, Bollywood wasn't around me. It was only experts in various fields. I took help of that. And so I tried everything under the sky available for me to extract information which will help me and support me in my healing process. And now when I'm working, I can definitely say Bollywood or film are part of my healing because it's supporting my growth. It's supporting me. One of my aspects is I'm an actor. An important aspect of my life is I'm an actor, and it supports my growth there. So I can definitely say yes now, but not then.
Can I just say one thing? I was very surprised and also very interested to see how you had accepted the role of Nargis Ji, who was also treated for cancer at the same clinic, Sloan Kettering, as you. And then, did that feel a bit odd for you to do that?
Absolutely. I was very nervous. I was very scared. I was thinking, oh my God, how will I do it? Will I, I had zillion questions. And when Raji offered me, I was in Kathmandu, I was in Nepal. And I said, let me come back to you. I'll come to Mumbai, meet you, and then decide. And when I met him, actually, I realized I'm in safe hands. And he narrated me everything, and it was only a positive aspect of Nargis Tachi that I had to portray and show. Then it was fine, yeah.
Hello, Manisha. My name is Surina Narula, and I remember.
Serena is the one who actually first sent me Manisha's book, and I was wondering whether she was going to be here. Thank you very much, Serena.
Right. So when I came to see you in New York, I was so inspired by your attitude to the whole, thing, because you were so positive. I came back to London and I had a script sitting on my desk called Decoding Annie Parker.
Yes.
Yeah, so I came and I encouraged my family to invest in it. We did, and the film got made. It is with Helen Hunt and Samantha Morton. And that film did so much for cancer research because Helen Hunt, the role she played was of a scientist.
Yes.
And Barack Obama actually gave £1 million for more research on cancer. And the lady who had cancer 5 times, on whom the film was made, Annie Parker, she started a foundation and she's got £1 million for that. So there's a lot of things happened by just that one visit and seeing you, so being so positive about it. And I think we should make an Indian film because that does help a lot of people. I went around with that film in America and a lot of people got up and they cried. They said, had we known that this is like genetic and what effect it has on a married couple, and you have to watch that film to see that. It inspired and made so many, that husband spoke up and said, we wish we had known this before. We wish we had seen this film. So I think there is a place to make this film. Would you be considering that?
I would definitely, most definitely. See, these are the ripple effects, and I'm so glad. Yeah.
Thank you, Serena. And Serena
and thank
HS,
you, Serena, for visiting New York.
Yeah.
You came twice.
And they were also one of the first people to support the Jaipur Literature Festival. And HS, who's not here right now, said to me, I don't think you know what you've created. This is going to be an incredible festival, not just here, but across the world. So, many thanks for the initial years of incredible support. Thank you.
Hi, Manisha. I just wanted to ask you, if the Manisha Koirala of today met the young, aspirational girl from Nepal, what would she say to her and why?
I would probably say, girl, you will go through a roller coaster life, but hang in there. It'll all turn out well.
And last question.
Manisha ji, this is about the Banaras days. I had the privilege of being the classmate of Shashank ji in the boarding school in St. Xavier's.
Wow.
But I think I know subsequently Harsh ji, Shashank ji, and Prakash ji all went to Banaras.
Yes.
And then Shashank did his long studies in ophthalmology and all there. So you had quite an extended family in Banaras. So how much of your Banaras days and experience was had influenced your life later on?
Well, I really firmly, I'm a total Banarsi. You can say that because my earlier childhood was in Banaras, and my uncle Shashank, he was I don't know if once you're a doctor, you're always a doctor, I think. Yeah. But he's joined politics now. And my uncle, scientist, my dad is a retired politician, but he's this thing. So, and I lived there with my grandmother. And my aunts were also, I grew up in a joint family in Banaras. And I loved growing up there. We used to have like classical musicians, tabla, kathak. I learned Bharatnatyam, Kathak at the age of 3. And probably poetry and writing and politics, the discussions, literature. The whole family environment, like authors like Tagore, Munshi Premchand, Shivani, a lot of, I grew up in that environment, and a lot of political leaders would come. So I think for me, Ganga, the Ghats, BHU, Vishwa Hindu, University, and rickshawalas, and I still go once a year to Banaras, and I have beautiful, wonderful memories in that. my childhood friends, my Banaras childhood friends, are still in touch with me. And yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, when I first received this book on my table, I rolled my eyes. Yet another, film stars books arrive. What am I going to do? And then I began reading it. It's beautifully written. It tells you a heroic tale of her life and time. Go out and buy it. She's going to be there to sign for you. Manisha Koirala, Nasreen, Munni, Kabir, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking time out from the shooting to be
Thank
with
you.
us.